it's recording. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Foff the Scribe podcast, where we have a variety. We're going to have to debate. Yes, I have the immense pleasure of welcoming Dr. Candace Drummond. You're you're muted. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate being here. I'm sorry, I was trying to do that to be polite during your intro.
Yes. Yes. Wow. That is awesome. Yeah, I also do that. I shut off my microphone so I won't have any distractions, any background noises. So before we start, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So, like you say, I'm Dr. Candace Drummond. I am a clinical psychologist. I am a licensed mental health therapist in Florida. I'm also a lead behavior analyst in Florida. And on top of all of that, I do some side life coaching courses and programs for moms. I'm primarily focused on moms in my coaching, and then in my private practice, I do mostly psychological testing. So I have contracts with some small government agencies, and then I also take a few insurances and private pay for the testing services.
Yeah, wow, that is very impressive. Very, I'm taken aback. And I'm so glad to hear from someone who has so many credentials and achievements. And but I want to take a step back and actually talk about how did you want to get into the field of psychology or general therapy, clinical, or whatever it entails.
Well, from a little girl, I always had this, I don't know how to explain it, but I would drive along in the back seat of the car. I would look over out of my window and see other cars driving along, and I wanted to just hop into their head. I wanted to just for a moment, just to know like where they're going, what are they thinking about, who are they getting, to pick up, who are they mad at, just in that like a snapshot, like right in that moment while I was, stuck in traffic. And growing up, I found my own struggles with mental health, and not really being able to understand it, coming from a Caribbean Jamaican background. My parents, traditionally, like, mental health is not a thing, and so go trying to understand myself, and like I said, my nosiness in understanding others. I went into the field, and I have been in mental health for about 17 years now. So my first foray was way back in 2005, and I just really loved it. I love being able to get into the minds and the issues and the workings of other people, and provide help if I can, or even just clarity, just a sounding board. Sometimes people need just a sounding board, someone that's just gonna listen and help them navigate their own stuff. I have stepped away from, like I say, direct therapy work. I haven't done that in about 5 years, but I still have one or two clients just to kind of keep my skills, on point. And yeah, I really just wanted to know and understand why people do what they do, how I can help them be better if they want to be better, and just better understand folks. I've heard more than 10,000 stories in my career.
Wow, that is amazing, and I don't know if one person can, contain so many, such a quantity of stories. Yeah, and all the, occurrences.
Yeah, when I was younger and newer to the field, I would have as many as 40 or 43 on my caseload at any given time, which means, 43 hours a week of, like you say, other people's lives, other people's stories, moving from week to week, and like you say, keeping all of these little tidbits, because people don't like when they come back to therapy the next week and you say, "Oh, I don't remember you said that last week." Okay, like people do not like that. And so, in my younger years, I think I found it a lot easier, like you said, to kind of carry all of these lives with me. But in 2016, my daughter was born. And, I don't know if it was a combination of like mommy brain and burnout, but I wasn't able to, like you say, contain as much on a running basis. And so I kind of adjusted, like I said, more to the testing world.
Yeah, so when you got into psychology at first, what were you trying to achieve, or rather, what were your professional and personal goals?
A big part of me was trying to fix me. Like I said, I had my own struggles with mental health throughout high school and my undergraduate years of college. I was misdiagnosed with depression, and no matter what I got, no matter what meds I got, no matter what happened, it's like it just got worse. It was just terrible. I attempted suicide in 2003 because of it, and a little while later realized that I was actually bipolar, and that was the reason that the antidepressants and that track of treatment wasn't working. But like I said, because of my going to school and I went and did my master's, I got better at diagnosing and understanding the different, just like these very, very minor differences between diagnoses. That was really my first, I would have to say, first personal goal as to why I went into psychology. And as I noted, like I say, my parents weren't necessarily on board with any sort of me seeking therapy. And so the Caribbean mindset is all on board with going to school. And so I went to school, that was what I did because that was what was acceptable. But professionally, I always wanted to be in business for myself. I've always been an entrepreneur. I think I started my first, obviously failed company. I think I started my first company way back in probably around that same time, around 2005, 2006, when I very, very first got into the field. I started a nonprofit for runaway and transient youth, because there is like a gap in service provision for those kids. And so I started this nonprofit and actually got poached by a national nonprofit, Stand Up for Kids, who saw the work that I was doing all by myself, and said, "Hey, come be our executive director." And so I was the executive director for Stand Up for Kids Miami chapter for about a year and a half. um, and it really taught me a lot about fundraising, grant writing, like all of the parts of nonprofit that no one really thinks about. You think you just get people's money and go do things, but it was very, very,
Yeah.
very, very enlightening for me, and that was my first foray, like I say, into entrepreneurship, and definitely not my last.
Yeah, it seems to be like some of these heads of the prominent heads of nonprofits. You know, the fundraising. You know, the galas, the glamour. You know, the morals superiority that you get to have. Um, I don't know how these people like make a buck, but they seem to be that industry seems to be very lucrative for the people on the top. In the top, yeah.
So, so what I discovered is that the majority of nonprofit organizations are actually tied to a for-profit corporation. And so, you have this for-profit corporation has excess profits. It's making too much money. And so these nonprofit organizations become these dumping grounds for, their additional profits, where they get tax exemptions. They can pay themselves again, as a salary from the nonprofit. Again, I did a lot of business studies in the last, like, almost 20 years. So like I say, again, I better understand, it's not, the bleeding hearts and the do-gooders are not necessarily the ones successful in nonprofit.
Yeah, it's it's very harrowing. I think to hear something like that from someone from the inside, from someone who is from inside the business or the industry or the field or whatever. But I want to get to something else. Um, well, actually, did you want to be a clinical psychologist? You know, to get the seven figure salary. You know, to sit on a couch or to slouch, sorry, on a couch and just to hear people blurt out all types of obscenities and yeah.
So my parents wanted me to be a doctor. Um, After I had gotten my bachelor's in psychology and my master's in counseling, it seemed like the logical next step and the easiest way to make my parents happy,
Yes.
right? They've got the doctor they
Yes.
wanted. Um, as far as income, I knew, psychologists, they don't really make that much. That was something I discovered while being a therapist. Because, like, even at the master's level, the majority of us are hired by these nonprofit agencies. You understand? The majority of us work in community mental health and those sorts of places. So we get to see, again, these Medicaid run, these donation run organizations, and how they work. um I wanted to be I wanted to become, like I say, a psychologist, mostly so that I had the doctor for my parents. But also because after working in therapy for 15 years, I realized that most people lie in therapy. They don't mean to, necessarily, because it's you're just trying to present the best version of yourself. You don't want to admit to all the ugliness, and and what I love about psychological testing is that what I can get out of, you know, 5 to 8 hours of testing would usually take me 3 to 6 months of therapy. And so testing kind of cuts through, a lot of the shame, and a lot of the, like I said, the self protection that people automatically do in therapy. So I was more inclined to, and again, I'm very scientifically minded, so I love the idea of being able to quantify the way we think, and the way we behave, like just that idea alone is like just amazing to me. And when you get to learn about some of these test development and what really goes into creating the questions that get the right kind of responses
Mm.
and answers to the
Yeah,
questions without letting the client know what you're asking. Oh, I
yeah.
just love it.
The researchers and the experiment. I don't know if it's politically correct to say experiments, but these, let's say, studies.
Yeah.
That's the jargon, the the muddled down version of experiments, but it's actually experiments. But
I mean, most studies in psychology, at least since the 1950s, don't
yes,
actually involve human subjects except for surveys.
yes,
And that's because of some of the stuff that we did before the 1950s in search of, like you say, understanding. So I would be more inclined to call them studies now, simply because, like I said, if they're humans, it's usually like a survey, something they're
yeah.
filling out. But the experiments definitely were
So
conducted
to
back
get
in the day.
to my point actually was that the research or the field is moving from quantitative to qualitative as sort of a method.
Well, I mean, it's always been, a two-part system. There are lots of psychologists that believe more in what we call the projective tests that are, like you said, more qualitative. But there's always a whole subsection of research that is dedicated to quantifying these various, like you said, concepts or constructs within the mind or thinking. So you have, like I said, you'll always have these two types. So the field, I don't think, will ever kind of move from one to the other. There'll always be both in any kind of science.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, you can apply it to the humanities and the social studies just as easily as you can for computer engineering and quantum physics. Whatever you would like to actually study and research and write about, and that is interesting to you. But how did you get to actually starting your company? Why did you start your company? How did it happen? How did you manage to open it?
So this one, Avid Intellectual, I started when I graduated with my doctorate. I graduated November 3rd, 2017. I opened Avid Intellectual November 30th, 2017. I then went after some, like I said, some small contracts, because while I was in school, most of my friends, again, their goals were to start a private practice. But you start a private practice, you get your little space, you put up your thing, whatever, and then no one comes. Crickets. How do you market yourself? How do you let people know that you're out there? How do you have this continual stream of clients, especially in our field where we can't have any kind of referral fees, or like we can't create anything that's actually going to be like financially beneficial to someone else. And so, like I said, many of my friends went through that, and I didn't want to go through that. So I decided that I was going to start my practice working with the government. And I did that, and within 18 months, from May of 2018 till December of 2019, we grossed about $500,000. And that was because of, like I said, the government contracts and stuff like that. But then, COVID shut that all down. And I lost everything. I lost all my office spaces. I was evicted from my apartment. I got my car repossessed. I moved to Jamaica and started rebuilding my company. And now we do virtual testing, like I said, for various cases throughout Florida and Jamaica, because now I'm licensed in Jamaica. And we are going to be reconnecting with our government contracts within the next few months. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome. It's an inspirational tale, I think, for everyone, for entrepreneurs, independents, also employed people. But so sorry, I lost my line of thought for a second. Sorry. I'll get it back. Uh, it's very weird how that happens. Sometimes I have this mental lapses, but it's because I have a lot of things going on in my head and in the same time. So I'll try to get it back. Sorry.
No worries at all.
Okay, sorry, I got it. It was very simple. It's very dumb, but I don't know how I forgotten. So, um, so what are some of the services that you actually focus on? What are some of the methods that you believe you can apply and that are tested and are proven to actually be more beneficial as opposed to other means and tools?
So, my favorite testing measure is called the PAI. It is the Personality Assessment Inventory. Um, it is not the gold standard. It's my favorite because of a couple of factors. The gold standard is one that they call the MMPI. That is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. The MMPI, I believe, is in its third edition. And like I said, that is what we would consider the gold standard. It has about 700 questions that, like I said, just ask pretty much how you feel about various things. I feel like I have a lot of friends. I find, I would consider myself reckless, just like it looks or seems like random questions. And there are about 700, but the reason that I don't utilize it, one, because of the length, it is very long, and two, because of the cost. The cost per administration is about $45. And that's just, like I said, that's just for this one measure. So I use one that is a little bit cheaper and a little bit shorter, but again has the same kind of research backing and the same kind of measures that it quantifies. And so that's the PAI. Like I said, the cost per administration is shorter. There are about 397 questions. So again, it's fewer questions, and it makes it a lot easier for the clients to answer correctly. With the MMPI, I find that some people answer correctly at like the first 300 or so, and then start to just kind of Christmas tree after that because they're just tired of bubbling stuff in. And so that's why, like I say, it's funny too, because the MMPI actually has scoring for the front half and the back half separately for that reason, like to compare if you're actually getting tired or weary. But that's my favorite. My favorite is by far the PAI.
Yeah, you can, like, if you get to question 100, 300, and then the question is like, do you see a pink elephant in the room? Maybe something like that along those lines.
Yep, there are questions that are like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are questions in there that are there simply to check if you're paying attention. Like my favorite activity in the world is stamp collecting. Granted, there will be a few people that say yes, but not very many. So,
Yeah, so you try to actually phrase the questions actually to build them yourself, or do you give any various do you try to phrase in different variations, or to revise questions that seem too complicated or too jargony?
No, not on the standardized test. I mean, the standardized tests, like I said, the personality inventory. There are some in what they call IQ tests, the cognitive achievement tests. All of these, like I said, are standardized tests. You are not allowed to change anything. Like you have to say, like they have scripts, word for word that we have to memorize. Like we can't adjust those, but again, like I said, some of the projective tests that are more qualitative, like a sentence completion. I can say the beginning of the sentence really any kind of way and have you complete it, because however you complete it is still going to tell me what I want to know. But on the standardized test, no, I can't, and I never do. No.
Yeah, so what are some of the other methods, technologically or scientifically or research wise, that you can conduct to any would be patient or patron of your services?
So most of our testing right now is for immigration services. Immigration provides like waivers for certain citizenship tests and things like that. If we can prove, intellectual disability, autism, something that would actually obstruct them from learning the required information. Also, there are again, what do you want to call them? They're like specialty visas that people can get, again, usually because of a mental disability. The United States feels that we are better suited to support people with special needs than some of the foreign or third world countries. And so if you're seeking asylum or seeking again residency or those kinds of things, then you can prove that either you or your child is in need of these special needs services, then the United States will allow you, like, again, special entry in order for you or your child to be better treated for these special needs. And then we do a lot right now with emotional support animals. We provide the psychological testing for folks who qualify for emotional support animals. It's very it's very cool, I guess, right now that honestly any animal that soothes you can be an emotional support animal, but that should not be confused with a service animal. An emotional support animal, like it says, is really just there for your emotional support. They don't get any sort of like those special privileges that a service dog gets. So, they wouldn't fly for free. They wouldn't be allowed in most taxis, things along those nature, just because again, they are not trained service dogs or service animals. And again, most places have eliminated or restricted service animals to either dogs or ponies, is what I believe at this point. So you can get dogs or ponies as service animals, and then you can have a rooster, a sheep, a swan, a cat, whatever as your emotional support animal. So again, just to kind of make that distinction. So we do a lot of those. Those are the primary. But again, if you have any questions about your mental health, and because we do a lot of second opinion or diagnostic clarification tests as well. Folks go to another, especially a psychiatrist. Their model is try this, see what happens. If it doesn't work, try this, see what happens. And again, that is their model. It's not that they're trying to get you out very quickly, but that is the physician model. They don't really test for diseases. That's what we do as psychologists. What they do is they medicate and see if the medication works. And if the medication works, then this is the diagnosis. If the medication doesn't work, then this is not the diagnosis. And so that's, like I said, that's their model. And so a lot of times, some people will find relief from a particular medication and say, yeah, okay, I feel better. And so the doctor will say, all right, you've got ADHD, we're done here. And they'll come to us to just kind of, like I said, get diagnostic clarification. We'll do a few of these tests and whatnot, and we'll find that maybe the focus issue isn't related to ADHD, but they're seeing relief in the focus issue from ADHD meds. So yeah.
Yeah, that is wonderful. It's very important in today's world where everything is information accessible with a click of a button, and you can open up an entirety of the world and the virtual world also. It's very important to get a second, a third, even a fourth and a fifth opinion on an issue, especially when it comes to a medical issue. So, what are some of your plans for expansion, for growing actually your business model? What are some of the goals that you would like to achieve in the future?
So, like I said, in the next month or so, I plan to be applying for more government contracts. We're going to be starting at the city level, city and county. We're not moving up to the state and national level, probably until the 6 months. So we're looking at summer of next year or so for the more national campaigns that we'll be looking at, but we'll be stepping back into the contracting world. Like I said, I do believe we will be doing more therapy work in that range, just because, like I say again, many of the government agencies already had requirements for psychological testing of some sort, and so we will try to, like I said, get back those contracts or even acquire new ones.
Mandatory or obligatory tests, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What they call pre-employment, post-infraction, all of those kinds of things. So yeah, especially fitness for duty, fitness for parenting, all of those. So again, we're going to be moving back into those. But now that, like I said, the demand for therapy is so much higher, we may be seeing more of these government agencies employing EAP programs, which are employee assistance programs, which do cover mental health therapy services. And we may be able to get into some of those as well. So my goal in the next 12 months would be to acquire a minimum of 5 new contracts.
Yeah, well, I would like to thank you so much for being a doctor. Of course, I have the immense pleasure of hosting a doctor on my show, a medical doctor at that, a true doctor, not a doctor of philosophy or something made up like that, some made up title. Just joking. But do you have any last?
Like I say, I'm a clinical psychologist, so a doctor in psychology. But I don't know when it was decided that like the highest level of knowledge means doctor. It's very confusing.
No, it's just a small joke,
No, it is. It's actually not. Because the DOs and the MDs, they don't like us.
Yeah. It all comes down to perception. The way
Yeah.
you view the way that you're going to affect your personal life, and you're going to shape your personal life that is going to impact other people that surround you. And you have to be very aware, very acutely and attuned with what you are trying to project to the world through your actions and your words. But do you have any last thoughts, anything that you insightful or inspiring that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I'd love everyone if they could check out my website, drcandicedrummond.com.
Yes.
Um, yeah, that's it. The shop, our shop has lots of courses and catalogs, pamphlets, books, videos, all sorts of stuff that can help people have a better life, especially mommies.
Well, Dr. Drummond, I have the immense pleasure in calling someone else a doctor. I really love that feeling. That I get to talk with someone who is intellectual, who is a visionary, who is motivational, and can inspire others to actually overcome a lot of difficulties in their lives and actually do better for themselves, to seek out treatment, to seek out help, to actually not be ashamed of who they are and actually tell the truth for once in their lives, and to themselves firstly, and then unto others. Well, I'd like to thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get to talk again in the near future, or just in the general vicinity, shall we say, future.
Anytime.
Well, okay. So, just a sec. I'll stop the recording.